The stars looked cold through the viewport of the flagship. Admiral Minho Kang stood alone in his quarters, watching the distant nebula swirl with purple and blue light. He had not slept in 30 hours. Sleep seemed pointless now, with what was coming. His communication device buzzed. Captain Sora Lim appeared on the screen, her face tight with worry. "Admiral, the Vakrine fleet has arrived. Sensors count 10,400 ships, maybe more behind the asteroid field." Minho nodded slowly. He had expected this. The whole galaxy had expected this. The Vakrine Empire did not make empty threats. When they demanded surrender, they came prepared to enforce it. "How many ships do we have ready?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. 47, sir. All accounted for and in position." 47 against 10,000. The numbers were absurd. Every military computer in human space had calculated the odds. 0.03% chance of victory. Total annihilation expected within 4 hours. Minho walked to the wall where an old photograph hung. It showed Earth, blue and green and perfect, taken from the first colony ship 200 years ago. Humanity had come so far since then. 23 colony worlds. 5 billion people living among the stars. All of it built with sweat and hope and stubborn refusal to quit. And now, the Vakrine wanted it all. The alien empire had ruled this part of the galaxy for 1,000 years. They were old, powerful, and absolutely certain of their superiority. 3 months ago, their emperor had sent a simple message to Earth. "Surrender your outer colonies, or we will take them. You have 90 days. Ambassador Yuna Choi had tried everything. She offered trade agreements, cultural exchanges, shared technology. The Vakrine laughed. Why negotiate with insects? That was what they called humans. Insects. Small, weak, barely worth noticing. Minho left his quarters and walked onto the bridge. The crew stood at their stations, faces calm but eyes wide. They were scared. Good. Fear kept you sharp. Chief Engineer Hyun Park looked up from his console. "All systems green, Admiral. The Cascade Drive is synchronized across the fleet. Every ship reports ready." "Good." Minho settled into his command chair. The main screen showed the Vakrine Armada spreading across space like a metal ocean. Their ships were massive, 3 times the size of human vessels. Each one bristled with weapons that could crack a planet's crust. Lieutenant Yoonji Song worked frantically at the communication station, her fingers flying over the controls. "Sir, I'm intercepting their command channels. They're laughing. They think this is a joke." "Let them laugh," Minho said quietly. Captain Sora pulled up tactical displays, studying the enemy formation. The Vakrine were arrayed in a traditional attack pattern, dense, overwhelming, designed to crush opposition through sheer mass. It had worked for them for centuries against dozens of other species. But those other species had fought the Vakrine in traditional ways. Ship against ship, gun against gun, hoping their bravery would somehow overcome impossible odds. Humanity had taken a different approach. For 60 years, ever since first contact with alien life, human strategists had studied every battle, every war, every conflict in recorded galactic history. They learned one terrible truth. The big empires always won, numbers always won, unless you changed the rules entirely. Dr. Ji-Wan Bei had changed the rules. The scientist appeared on a side screen, broadcasting from Earth Command. Her gray hair was pulled back and dark circles ringed her eyes. She had worked for 20 years on the Cascade Drive, spending her entire adult life on a weapon she hoped would never be used. "Admiral Kang, all quantum links are stable. Every ship in the fleet is connected. You'll operate as a single organism, not separate vessels. The targeting computers will share data faster than thought. When one ship sees an enemy, all ships see it." "And the gravitic pulse?" Minho asked. "Ready." Captain Junho Han reports his stealth ships are in position inside their formation. The Vakreen still don't see them. Minho smiled. Humanity's stealth technology was primitive compared to Vakreen shields and weapons, but it turned out the Vakreen had never bothered to develop sensors for things they couldn't imagine. Why look for invisible ships when you could simply overwhelm any enemy with numbers? Ambassador Yuna appeared on another screen. She sat in the Vakreen flagship's communication room, surrounded by alien guards. They had demanded she witness the battle in person, a demonstration of what happened to species that defied the Empire. "Minho," she said softly, using his first name. They had known each other since university. "I've tried everything. They won't listen. Their commander says they'll accept surrender only after your fleet is destroyed. They want Earth to watch you die." "I know, Yuna. Thank you for trying. The channel is still open. I can broadcast your surrender if you want to save lives." Minho looked at his crew. Sora met his eyes and shook her head slightly. Hyun's jaw was set, determined. Yunji wiped away a tear, but stayed at her post. Across the fleet, 47 ships held position, waiting. "Tell them," Minho said clearly, "that they were warned." Yuna nodded. She stood and addressed the Vakreen commander in their harsh language. The alien's response came back translated. "Humanity dies today. Let this be a lesson to the galaxy." The diplomatic channel closed. On the main screen, the Vakreen fleet began moving forward, a wall of metal and death. Energy signatures spiked as they charged their weapons. 10,000 ships, all aimed at Earth's 47 defenders. Admiral Minho Kang took a deep breath and pressed the fleet-wide communication button. "All ships, this is Admiral Kang. Humanity has always been underestimated. Today, we remind the galaxy why that's a mistake. Activate Cascade Drive. Prepare Protocol Thunderfall. Let's show them what happens when you threaten our home." The bridge lights dimmed as power flowed to the quantum systems. Minho felt it then, a strange sensation like his thoughts were expanding. He could feel the other 46 ships, their captains, their crews, all connected through quantum entanglement. They were no longer separate vessels. They were one, and they were ready. The Cascade Drive hummed to life across all 47 human ships. Chief Engineer Hyun Park watched the energy readings climb, his hands steady on the controls despite the sweat on his forehead. Numbers scrolled across his screens, all green, all perfect. "Quantum synchronization at 100%, he reported. "Neural links stable. We're connected, Admiral." Minho felt the connection deepen. It was unlike anything he had experienced before. He could sense Captain Sora's tactical analysis happening in real time, could feel Hyun's monitoring of every power fluctuation, could even perceive Lieutenant Yunji's interception of enemy communications. 47 ships, 4,000 crew members, all thinking together. The Vakreen fleet fired first. Massive energy beams lanced across space, enough firepower to vaporize a moon. The human fleet scattered instantly, each ship moving in perfect coordination with the others. Not one beam found its target. The vessels dodged like they were reading the future, because, in a sense, they were. The quantum connection let them process tactical data so fast that enemy weapons seemed to move in slow motion. "Impossible," Lieutenant Yunji translated from the Vakreen channels. "They're saying our reaction time is impossible. Their targeting computers can't get a lock." Commander Taeyang O sat in his fighter cockpit 3 kilometers from the flagship, grinning fiercely. His squadron of 84 pilots were all connected to the Cascade network. They moved like a school of fish, perfectly synchronized, each maneuver flowing into the next, without a single voice command needed. "All fighters, engage," he said, though he barely needed to speak. The other pilots already knew what to do. The small human fighters poured from the launch bays, so fast the Vakreen sensors registered them as a weapons malfunction at first. 2,000 fighters spread across the battlefield, weaving between enemy ships, too small and too quick to hit. The Vakreen commander ordered his second wave to fire. 5,000 ships unleashed their weapons simultaneously, and that was when humanity revealed its second advantage. Dr. Jiwon Bei had spent 20 years developing the Cascade Drive, but she had not worked alone. Hundreds of scientists, engineers, and programmers had built systems the galaxy had never seen. While the Vakreen relied on brute force, humanity had weaponized mathematics itself. Every human ship ran predictive combat algorithms. The computers calculated every possible enemy action, every firing solution, every tactical choice. They did this not once, but billions of times per second, running simulations faster than reality itself. When the Vakreen fired their second wave, humanity's computers had already predicted it. The human fleet shifted formation 2 seconds before the weapons fired. They moved to positions the enemy couldn't have anticipated, because those positions only made sense if you knew where the shots would be. The energy beams crossed empty space, hitting nothing. "Their communications are going crazy," Yunji reported, her voice rising with excitement. "They're accusing each other of sensor failures. They think their equipment is broken." Captain Sora pulled up a tactical display. "Admiral, their formation is compressing. They're moving closer together to increase firing density." Minho smiled grimly. "Exactly as we predicted. They're doing our job for us." The Vakreen believed their greatest strength was numbers. Pack enough ships together, fill space with enough firepower, and nothing could survive. It had worked for 1,000 years. But humanity had learned something from Earth's ancient history. The massive Persian army at Thermopylae, the Spanish Armada, the certainty of the Titanic. Sometimes size was not strength. Sometimes it was the greatest weakness. "Signal Captain Junho," Minho ordered. "It's time." 20 light seconds away, invisible to every Vakreen sensor, Captain Junho Han sat in the command chair of the stealth ship Silent Judgment. His vessel and 11 others like it had been hiding inside the enemy formation for 6 hours, using experimental cloaking technology that bent light and energy around them. The Vakreen had never encountered stealth ships before. In their 1,000-year empire, they had crushed every enemy with visible, honorable, overwhelming force. They had no reason to look for invisible threats. Junho received Minho's signal through the quantum link. He felt the Admiral's determination, Sora's tactical genius, Hyun's steady competence. He felt all 4,000 crew members in the human fleet, their fear and courage mixing together. "Drop stealth," he ordered. "Activate gravitic pulse arrays." The 12 stealth ships appeared simultaneously inside the Vakreen formation. Weapons Officer Nari Kim, stationed aboard Junho's ship, entered the final activation codes. The gravitic pulse array was humanity's most devastating weapon, a device that generated localized gravitational waves to collapse enemy shields from the inside. The Vakreen had powerful shields, among the best in the galaxy, but shields were designed to stop external threats. They had never needed to stop something that materialized inside their own formation. Nari pressed the activation button. Space itself seemed to ripple. 12 gravitic pulses expanded outward, invisible waves of twisted gravity that passed through armor like it was air but struck shields like a hammer. The quantum network coordinated the pulses perfectly, timing each wave to amplify the others. 300 Vakreen ships went dark in the first second, their shields collapsing, their power systems overloading from the gravitational stress. The enemy fleet tried to respond, but they were packed too tightly. Ships collided as they attempted evasive maneuvers. The massive vessels that had seemed so powerful were now trapped by their own formation, unable to move without hitting their neighbors. Commander Taeyang's fighters struck next. His squadron had been waiting for this moment, positioned perfectly through the quantum network's coordination. They dove into the confusion, launching missiles that humanity had specifically designed for this battle. The missiles were simple, almost primitive by galactic standards, but they didn't need to be fancy. Each one carried a small gravitic charge. When they struck a ship with collapsed shields, they created a cascade effect. The gravitational wave spread to nearby vessels, and those vessels spread it further. One missile could disable 10 ships. 10 missiles could disable 100. Taeyang's 2,000 fighters carried 8 missiles each. Fox 1, Fox 2, Fox 3, Taeyang said calmly, launching his entire payload. Around him, his squadron did the same. 16,000 missiles crossed space in a precise pattern calculated by the fleet's computers. Lieutenant Yunji listened to the Vakrine communications dissolve into chaos. Orders contradicted each other. Ships reported critical failures. The Supreme Commander was screaming at his subordinates, demanding to know how humans had breached their formation. Dr. Jiwon watched from Earth, tears streaming down her face. 20 years of work, 20 years of hoping it would never be needed. But if it had to be used, let it be used to protect humanity's home. Gravitic cascade is spreading, Hyun reported. Enemy shields are collapsing in sequence. It's working exactly as the simulations predicted. The Vakrine fleet, once a proud armada of 10,000 ships, was tearing itself apart. Not from human weapons, but from its own weaknesses. Its overconfidence, its rigid tactics, its inability to imagine that anyone could challenge them. Admiral Minho stood from his command chair. Through the quantum link, he felt every member of his fleet, their determination, their unity. All ships, he said quietly, prepare Protocol Thunderfall. Let's finish this. Protocol Thunderfall had a simple purpose: end the battle so quickly that the enemy never had a chance to hurt anyone. Admiral Minho had named it himself, thinking of how thunder came after lightning, how the sound arrived after the strike was already done. By the time the Vakrine understood what hit them, it would already be over. Captain Sora's fingers danced across her tactical console. Admiral, launching drone networks now. Each of the 47 human ships opened their cargo bays. What emerged looked like a silver cloud, thousands of small objects scattering in every direction. The Vakrine sensors tried to track them and failed. There were too many moving too fast, coordinating too perfectly. The drones were not sophisticated individually. Each one was barely larger than a soccer ball, with a simple computer, a small thruster, and a single weapon. But they were connected to the Cascade network, guided by the collective intelligence of 4,000 human minds and hundreds of quantum computers. 47 ships each released 200 drones. 9,400 autonomous hunters spread across the battlefield. Every single one sharing tactical data in real time. Weapons Officer Nari Kim monitored the gravitic pulse effects from her station aboard the Silent Judgment. The Vakrine shields were still collapsing in cascading waves. Ships that had been invincible moments ago were now exposed, vulnerable, trapped in their own formation. Target locks acquired, she reported. All enemy vessels are mapped. Quantum targeting solutions uploaded to the fleet. This was the key to Protocol Thunderfall. Traditional warfare meant each ship picked its own targets, wasted shots on vessels others were already engaging, left dangerous enemies unattended. Chaos and confusion. The Cascade Network eliminated all of that. Every human ship, every fighter, every drone knew exactly which enemy to engage. There was no duplication, no waste, no confusion. 4,000 minds working as one. Perfect coordination across the entire battlefield. Execute, Minho said. The human fleet opened fire. Magnetic railguns accelerated tungsten rods to a fraction of light speed. Energy weapons sliced through space with surgical precision. The small drones, dismissed by the Vakrine as irrelevant, proved devastatingly effective against ships with collapsed shields. Each drone struck exactly where the quantum computers calculated maximum damage, hitting power cores, weapons arrays, engine systems. Commander Tai Yang led his fighters in a second pass, this time targeting the Vakrine capital ships. The massive vessels had seemed invincible, but with their shields down, they were just large targets. His missiles struck command centers, communication hubs, anything that would paralyze the enemy fleet. The quantum network calculated everything: which ships to destroy, which to disable, which to ignore because they were already crippled. Human weapons moved with perfect efficiency, each shot counting. Nothing wasted. 17 seconds after Protocol Thunderfall began, 3,000 Vakrine ships were completely disabled. Lieutenant Unji's console lit up with intercepted communications. The Vakrine were screaming at each other, their carefully organized command structure breaking down. Ship captains were abandoning formation, trying to escape, but their vessels were too large, too slow, and packed too tightly together. Captain Junho watched from inside the enemy formation, his stealth ship still invisible. Vakrine vessels were colliding with each other in their panic. Some were firing wildly, hitting their own allies. The proud empire that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries was falling apart. "Admiral," Junho reported, "their command ship is trying to organize a counterattack. They're attempting to target our position through debris analysis." "Can they find you?" "Not before we finish this." Sora pulled up the battle statistics, her eyes widening. "Sir, enemy combat effectiveness has dropped to 12%. We've disabled or destroyed 70% of their fleet. Human casualties are minimal. Shields are holding on all vessels." Minimal casualties. That phrase made Minho close his eyes for a moment. 23 crew members injured from impacts when the battle started. None seriously. 0 deaths. Against 10,000 enemy ships, humanity had suffered 0 deaths. This was why they had prepared for 60 years. Not to kill, but to win so decisively that killing was unnecessary. The Vakrine Supreme Commander's voice cut through the chaos, transmitted on all frequencies. Lieutenant Yunji translated it, her voice shaking slightly. "He's ordering all remaining ships to concentrate fire on the flagship. He says they'll take you down even if it costs them everything." 2,000 Vakrine vessels, the survivors of the once mighty armada, began turning toward the Eternal Resolve, their weapons charged, building energy for a final desperate strike. Minho could have ordered the fleet to destroy them all. The quantum targeting systems could calculate the exact firing solution to eliminate every remaining enemy ship in seconds. Instead, he made a different choice. All ships, maximum defensive formation around the flagship, shields to full power. "Do not fire unless I give the order." Chief Engineer Hyun looked up in surprise. "Admiral, let them see," Minho said quietly. "Let them see that we could destroy them, but choose not to." The human fleet shifted instantly, 47 ships arranging themselves in a perfect defensive sphere around the flagship. Their shields linked together through the quantum network, creating a barrier that could withstand anything. 2,000 Vakrine ships fired everything they had: energy beams, missiles, kinetic rounds, experimental weapons they had been saving for a desperate moment. Enough firepower to crack a planet. The human shields held. Every shot was absorbed, deflected, or dissipated. The quantum computers had calculated the exact shield frequency and power distribution needed to stop the attack. The mathematics was perfect. The execution was flawless. And when the Vakrine weapons finally stopped, when their energy reserves were exhausted, the human fleet was undamaged. Minho stood and walked to the front of the bridge, staring at the main screen. The Vakrine fleet was broken, scattered, helpless. He could finish them. Every human computer, every tactical program, every logical calculation said to destroy the enemy completely while they were vulnerable. But logic was not the same as wisdom. "Open a channel to the Vakrine Supreme Commander," he ordered. The alien's face appeared on the screen. The Supreme Commander looked nothing like a human, with 4 eyes and skin that shifted between blue and gray. But Minho could read the expression clearly enough: shock, disbelief, fear. "This battle is over," Minho said calmly. "You have lost. But humanity does not wish to slaughter you. Power down your weapons. Surrender your fleet. Your crews will be treated with honor and returned safely. You have 60 seconds to decide." The Supreme Commander stared at him. "How? How did you do this? You underestimated us. You believed numbers meant victory. You forgot that intelligence, preparation, and unity can defeat any enemy." 40 seconds remained. The Vakreen commander looked at something off-screen, probably casualty reports and damage assessments. His empire's pride lay in ruins around him. 10,000 ships reduced to smoking wrecks and disabled hulks in less than 2 minutes. "If we surrender, what guarantee do we have that you won't destroy us anyway? You have my word, and humanity keeps its word." 30 seconds. The commander's shoulders sagged. A gesture that looked almost human despite his alien form. He spoke to someone off-screen, then turned back to Minho. "We surrender." The timestamp on Sora's console read 93 seconds since the first shot was fired. 93 seconds to defeat an empire. The silence that followed the surrender was almost physical. Admiral Minho stood on his bridge watching the disabled Vakreen fleet drift in space. Debris floated everywhere, sparking with residual energy. Emergency lights blinked on thousands of damaged ships. Medical Officer Hana Shin rushed onto the bridge, her uniform still clean despite having spent the last hour preparing for casualties that never came. "Admiral, medical report. 23 injured crew members, all minor. Burns, bruises, 1 broken arm. No fatalities." Minho nodded slowly, letting that sink in. No one dead. Against impossible odds, against an empire that had promised to annihilate humanity, they had won without losing a single life. "What about the Vakreen?" he asked. Hana's expression softened. "Their casualties are severe. Preliminary estimates suggest 89,000 dead from explosive decompressions, reactor failures, and collision impacts. 200,000 injured. Another 200,000 trapped in disabled ships awaiting rescue." The numbers hit Minho hard. 89,000 lives. Yes, they had been the enemy. Yes, they had come to destroy human colonies. But they were still lives, still people with families and hopes and dreams. "Begin rescue operations," he ordered. "All ships with medical capabilities prepare to receive Vakreen wounded. We treat them exactly as we would treat our own." Captain Sora looked up from her console. "Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. The battle was broadcast live. Everyone saw what happened." "Show me." The main screen divided into dozens of smaller images. Alien species Minho had never seen before, representatives from empires and federations and alliances spanning thousands of light years. All of them were talking about the same thing: humanity's victory. Lieutenant Yunji worked frantically to translate the flood of messages. "Sir, the Centauri Collective is offering an immediate alliance. The Andorian Republic wants to open trade negotiations. The Spiral Council is requesting a meeting with Earth's leaders. They're all afraid of us." Afraid. Minho had not wanted that. Fear led to more conflict, more war. Humanity had not fought to become the next great terror of the galaxy. Ambassador Yuna Choi appeared on a private channel, her face exhausted but relieved. She was back aboard a human rescue ship, having been evacuated from the Vakreen flagship. "Minho, I've been contacted by 17 different species in the last 10 minutes. They all want the same thing: protection from the Vakreen, or protection from us." She paused. "What you did here today changed everything." Intelligence Officer Doyun Kwan approached the Admiral's chair carrying a data tablet. He was young, barely 30, but brilliant at pattern analysis. "Sir, I've been going through the Vakreen databases we captured. You need to see this." Doyen pulled up files on the main screen. Records, battle reports, historical documents. The Vakreen Empire's history stretched back over 1,000 years, just as they claimed. But the details were darker than anyone had known. "They've subjugated 47 different species," Doyen explained. "Each time the pattern was the same: show overwhelming force, demand surrender, and crush any resistance. They've destroyed 12 entire civilizations that refused to submit." The bridge crew watched in horrified silence as images flashed across the screen. Planets bombed from orbit. Cities reduced to ash. Populations enslaved or scattered. "The galaxy has been living in terror of them for centuries," Doyen continued. "Other empires only survived by paying tribute or staying small enough to be ignored. No one dared challenge the Vakreen because everyone believed they were invincible." Captain Junho's face appeared on a communication channel. His stealth ship was coordinating rescue efforts inside the debris field. "Admiral, we're finding something interesting in the Vakreen ships. Food supplies, medical equipment, civilian quarters. These weren't just warships. Some of them had families aboard." Minho felt sick. Families. The Vakreen had been so confident of victory that they brought their families to watch. "Save everyone you can," he ordered. "Children first." Hana was already organizing triage centers. Human medical ships moved through the debris, pulling survivors from wrecked vessels. The same drones that had disabled the enemy fleet now carried medical supplies and rescue equipment. Commander Taeyang brought his fighter squadron back to the flagship, his pilots exhausted but unharmed. As he climbed out of his cockpit, ground crew rushed to check the fighters for damage. Most had minor scoring from debris, nothing serious. "We won," Taeyang said to himself, still not quite believing it. "We actually won." 6 hours after the battle ended, the first Vakreen wounded were brought aboard the Eternal Resolve. Hana and her medical team worked without rest, treating humans and aliens side by side. The Vakreen patients were confused, afraid, expecting execution or torture. Instead, they received the best medical care humanity could provide. One Vakreen soldier, his blue-gray skin covered in burns, grabbed Hana's arm as she worked. "Why?" he asked in broken human language. "Why save us?" "We came to destroy you." Hana met his 4 eyes steadily. "Because that's who we are. We're not conquerors. We're not monsters. We're humans, and we don't let people die when we can save them." The soldier stared at her, then began to weep. Ambassador Yuna organized an emergency galactic conference, bringing together representatives from 30 species. She stood before them via hologram, Earth rising blue and green behind her. "Today, humanity demonstrated our military capability," she said. "But that demonstration was not a threat. It was a promise. We will defend ourselves and our allies with overwhelming force, but we will also show mercy to defeated enemies. We seek peace, not conquest." Dr. Ji-Won Bei joined the conference from her laboratory. The scientist who had created the Cascade Drive looked exhausted, but determined. "Humanity will share defensive technology with peaceful species. We will help you protect yourselves, but our offensive capabilities will remain classified, not as a secret to hold over you, but as a deterrent. As long as the galaxy knows we can defend ourselves, perhaps no one will force us to." The Vakreen Supreme Commander, bandaged and broken, was brought before the conference under guard. He stood silently as human and alien representatives discussed his empire's fate. Finally, Minho spoke. "The Vakreen Empire has committed terrible crimes across centuries, but we will not respond to genocide with genocide. The Vakreen will disarm their military. They will release all subject species. They will pay reparations to those they've harmed." and they will be given a chance to rebuild as a peaceful civilization. You would let us live? The Supreme Commander asked, disbelief clear in his voice. After everything we've done? We would let you learn, Minho replied. Humanity was not always peaceful. We fought terrible wars among ourselves before we reached the stars. We know that people can change. We're giving you that chance. The conference ended with the formation of a new alliance, the Galactic Defense Cooperation, with Earth as its primary military coordinator. Not an empire, but a partnership of equals. Humanity would provide protection and technology. Other species would contribute resources, knowledge, and cultural exchange. As the delegates signed the agreement, Captain Sora approached Minho privately. Admiral, do you think they'll keep the peace? Or are we just delaying the next war? Minho looked at the image of the Vakrine wounded, being carried to safety by human medics. He thought of the children rescued from the wrecked ships. He remembered the soldier who wept when shown mercy. I don't know, he admitted. But we showed the galaxy two things today. First, that we can't be conquered. And second, that we'd rather save lives than take them. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's how you build a real peace. In the distance, the first Vakrine ship powered down its weapons voluntarily, accepting human inspectors aboard. Then another. Then 10 more. Perhaps it was enough. 6 months had passed since the battle that lasted 93 seconds. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Admiral Minho Kang walked through the corridors of Unity Station, the massive space station that now served as headquarters for the Galactic Defense Cooperation. The station orbited between Earth and the former Vakrine capital world, a symbol of the new order. Human engineers had built it alongside Vakrine workers, former enemies constructing something together. He wore a new uniform now with insignia that represented not just Earth but 37 different species. Supreme Commander of Allied Defense. It was a title he had never wanted but accepted because someone had to build the peace they had fought for. Commander Kang, a Vakrine officer said, saluting as Minho passed. The gesture was crisp, professional, nothing like the proud warriors who had attacked 6 months ago. The morning briefing is ready. Minho returned the salute. Thank you, Officer Talon. I'll be there shortly. He paused at a window overlooking the construction bays. New ships were being built there, joint designs that combined human quantum technology with Vakrine shield systems and propulsion from a dozen other species. Not weapons of conquest, but tools of protection. The briefing room held representatives from every member species. Captain Sora Lim stood at the front, no longer just a tactical officer, but now the head of the Allied training program. She had spent the last 6 months teaching former enemies to work together, turning rivals into teammates. Good morning, Sora began, pulling up a holographic star map. The Andaran Republic reported 2 pirate attacks last week. Both were repelled by local defense forces using our distributed network tactics. No casualties on either side. Minho smiled. The Andaran had been one of the species terrorized by the Vakrine for centuries. Now they could defend themselves. That was the whole point. Humanity did not want to be the galaxy's police force. They wanted to teach everyone to stand together. The training program has graduated another 200 officers this month, Sora continued. We now have mixed species crews on 47 ships. The cooperation protocols are working better than expected. 47 ships, the same number humanity had brought to battle 6 months ago, but these 47 represented something different. Hope instead of desperation. Unity instead of isolation. Intelligence Officer Doyun Kwan presented next. His analysis division had grown to include historians, sociologists, and cultural experts from across the galaxy. We've finished cataloging the Vakrine historical archives. The data has been shared with all affected species. Several truth and reconciliation committees are forming. The Vakrine representative, a diplomat named Corin, spoke quietly. My people are ashamed of what we did. The archives show crimes we had forgotten or ignored. We are working to make reparations, but we know we can never fully repay what was taken. No one expects perfection, Minho said. We expect effort, and you're giving that. Ambassador Yuna Choi joined the meeting via hologram from Earth, where she now chaired the Galactic Council. The council met monthly, giving every species an equal voice. It was messy, argumentative, and slow. Democracy usually was, but it was working. Earth has received formal requests from 12 new species wanting to join the defense cooperation, Yuna reported. We've also had 3 requests from species asking for help mediating territorial disputes. Are we ready to handle mediations? Minho asked. We have to be. The alternative is letting those disputes turn into wars. Dr. Ji-Won Bae appeared on another screen, broadcasting from her laboratory. The scientist had become a reluctant celebrity, known across the galaxy as the mind behind humanity's victory. She hated the attention. The latest defensive technology packages are ready for distribution, Ji-Won said, getting straight to business. Improved shield harmonics, basic quantum communication systems, and updated sensor arrays. 20 species have requested the upgrades. And our offensive capabilities? Minho asked. Remain classified, as agreed. Only humans have full access to the Cascade Drive and gravitic pulse weapons. We've shared enough that others can defend themselves, but not enough to start an arms race. It was a delicate balance. Share too little, and their allies felt vulnerable. Share too much, and someone would inevitably use the technology for conquest. Humanity walked that line carefully. Commander Taiyang O reported from the Fighter Training Academy. His facility trained pilots from every species, teaching them the cooperative tactics that had won the battle. We graduated 50 new pilots this week. They're good, really good. Some of the Vakreen pilots are natural at formation flying. After the briefing, Minho walked to the memorial garden. It was a quiet space at the station's center, filled with plants from dozens of worlds. At its heart stood a monument made of melted metal from both human and Vakreen ships destroyed in the battle. Names were carved into the metal. The 89,000 Vakreen who had died. The 23 humans who had been injured. Every life touched by those 93 seconds. A young cadet approached nervously. Hyejin Ryu was 18 years old, fresh from the academy, one of the first generation of humans to grow up after the battle. She wore the uniform of the Allied Defense Forces, mixing human and alien design elements. Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt, Hyejin said. I just wanted to thank you. My school studies the battle every year. We learn about the Cascade Drive and Protocol Thunderfall. But more than that, we learn about why you showed mercy. Why you saved the enemy instead of destroying them. Minho looked at this young woman, who would never know humanity as weak or afraid. She had grown up in a galaxy where humans were respected, where cooperation was normal, where different species worked together. What will you do with that knowledge? He asked. Hyejin straightened. Serve, sir. Protect the peace you built. Make sure the next generation never has to fight the way you did. She saluted and left. Minho watched her go, thinking about the future she represented. Medical Officer Hana Shin found him there an hour later. She had been promoted to Chief Medical Coordinator, overseeing health programs across the Alliance. The last of the Vakreen wounded have been released from care, she reported. Full recovery for 93% of them. The others have permanent injuries but are stable. That's good work. It was everyone's work. Humans, Vakreen, Andaran doctors, Centauri nurses. We saved them together. Hana paused. You know what the Vakreen call us now? What? The merciful warriors. They tell stories about the humans who could have destroyed them but chose not to. Some of their children draw pictures of human medics saving their parents. Minho felt emotion tighten his throat. That was the legacy he wanted. Not fear, but respect. Not domination, but cooperation. That evening, Captain Junho Han arrived at the station with his stealth ship squadron. They had been mapping the outer regions, looking for threats and opportunities. "We found 3 more species in the unexplored sectors," Junho reported. "All of them heard about the 93-second war. They're cautious, but interested in contact. Good. Yuna will want to meet them." The next day, Minho stood before the Galactic Council, giving his regular security briefing. Representatives from 37 species listened, asking questions, offering suggestions. It was chaotic and wonderful. "The Instant Peace Protocol has been tested twice this quarter," he explained. "In both cases, the mere presence of Allied defense ships ended conflicts before they started. No shots fired, no casualties. That's the goal. Be so ready for war that no one dares start one." A representative from a small species called the Quillen raised a tentacle. "Commander, when will humanity share the full cascade drive technology?" Minho had been asked this question 100 times. "When we're confident it won't be used for conquest. The technology was designed to defend Earth against impossible odds. Making it common knowledge would create the very arms race we're trying to prevent." "But you don't trust us." "I don't trust anyone with that much power, including humans. That's why only 47 ships have full cascade capability, and all of them answer to this council, not to Earth alone." The Quillen considered this. A wise precaution, perhaps? After the session, Minho returned to the memorial garden. He often came here to think, to remember why they had fought and what they were building. Captain Sora joined him, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Thinking heavy thoughts, Admiral?" "Always." He accepted the coffee. "Do you think it will last, this peace?" Sora looked at the monument, at the names of the fallen. "The battle lasted 93 seconds. We've had peace for 6 months. That's about 15,000 times longer." She smiled. "I'd say that's a good trend." Minho laughed despite himself. "When did you become an optimist?" "When I watched 37 species work together despite centuries of conflict. When I saw Vakreen pilots protecting Andaran traders. When I realized that showing mercy was the most powerful thing we've ever done." They stood together in silence, watching the construction bays where former enemies built ships together. In the distance, a mixed crew of humans and Vakreen loaded supplies onto a patrol vessel. Children from a dozen species played in the station's park, learning each other's games. Cadet Hyejin Ryu passed by again, this time laughing with a Vakreen cadet her own age. They were studying together, preparing for their first assignment. The next generation, already better than the last. Admiral Minho Kong, Supreme Commander of Allied Defense, allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. They had not eliminated war. They had not created a perfect galaxy. But they had done something humanity had always been good at. They had adapted. They had prepared. They had fought when necessary and shown mercy when possible. They had turned enemies into allies and fear into respect. The 47 ships that had defended Earth now sat in museums across human space, preserved as monuments. Children took field trips to see them, to learn about the day humanity stopped being victims and became protectors. Above each ship, the same motto was inscribed in every galactic language: peace through readiness, mercy through strength. It had taken 93 seconds to prove those words. It would take generations to fully live them, but humanity, stubborn as always, was determined to try. And the galaxy, watching carefully, was beginning to believe they might actually succeed.